Hello everyone and welcome to my Wise Unity tutorial, integration tutorial. Before we jump in, there's a couple of things really important for you guys to know. In order to integrate Unity with Wise, you need Unity Pro, and it will only work in the Pro version. Um, Also, this tutorial won't be a Wise heavy tutorial. I will mostly skim through the Wise part, because I noticed there's a lot of Wise tutorials out there and not as much as Unity working with Wise tutorials. So let's go into it. We'll create a new project. Again, we'll start the integration from scratch. So we'll create a new folder. It's called as Wise Unity int. Awesome name. And we'll need a character controller package. We will use this character controller to basically walk in the world and test our integration, if that makes sense. The first thing we want to note is to see which version of Unity we're using. I noticed that this version doesn't work with the latest integration package. So that will affect the version of the integration package that we'll have to download. We checked the version. Now let's get the integration package. We'll go to the Audiokinetic website and downloads Unity for integration. This is the latest stable. We'll go one version before that. Sorry, it was me moving the mic. Let's get the windows. Awesome. Now, just we'll adjust our Unity project. Everyone has their own favorite work layouts, and I'm not different. No, scene here, game here. Okay. And the next thing we need to do while it is downloading, it finished. So again, we grab the previous version because of the version of Unity that we have, and now we will create a new Wise project. I noticed that it is a good practice to create the Wise project inside your Unity project. So we'll go to Unity int inside assets. So if there are more than if there's a team of people working on a project, you don't need to worry updating everybody's Wise project and keeping everybody up to date. So we'll create a folder, call it Wise project, and inside that folder we'll select that folder and we name this project Wise Unity int win. I don't know. Okay, we don't need those samples, reverb models. No, we don't need any of this. Let's create this project. We created a Wise project inside Unity. If we open up Unity, it will update, and we will be able to see our Wise project in Unity's hierarchy. Inside the hierarchy in Unity, we'll be able to see everything that is inside the assets folder. If we go to Unity and assets, here we go. We have the standard assets, which is our character controllers that we imported, and our Wise project. Okay, let's start the integration. Something that I noticed that inside the Wise project, there is a corrupted WAV file. I don't know, it always throws errors. Unity tries to read this file and it having a hard time, so I'm just deleting it because it's part of the isotope plugin, and I'm not using an isotope plugin because isotope plugin requires his own license. Yep. So now we have no errors, everything looks good. We are ready to integrate. Let's open up the package. And basically, it's double click on the package, import everything. It will organize everything in the right folders. Because our Wise project is inside our Unity project, it already recognized the path to the project. So this first first address is the path to the project, and this next address is the generated sound banks. The generated sound banks will be in basically it's where Wwise will go look for the sound banks. It will open up. It will be inside the streaming assets folder. Okay. After we integrated, a couple of things happened now. We have this window, the Wwise Picker, and inside the Wwise Picker we have a complete view of our Wwise project. As you can see, it's empty right now, and it's because it wants me to reload the Wwise project because it noticed that I integrated with Unity. So because our Wwise project is empty, this is empty. As long as the auto populate is ticked, every time I will save my project, my Wwise project, it will automatically update the Wwise Picker here. Again, in Wwise settings, here we have this XML file that holds all the addresses that we specify them, like also the sound banks and also the Wwise project. If you want, you can go manually and change that for any reason the Wwise project moved or something like that happened. Now the scene has Wwise Global, which is the script that is initializing the audio engine. And if we take a look at our main camera, usually all the cameras and in Unity have an audio listener. This audio listener. So what the integration did, it actually removed the native Unity audio listener and placed a audio kinetic audio listener. Well, after we covered all that, we'll create a test scene. We'll create a plane. A plane will be 10 by 10 by 10. Awesome. This is our plane. Will create a directional light so we can see what is happening. And we'll go to our standard assets, character controller, first person controller prefab, and drag them into the hierarchy. So this gives us this guy, which is a first person controller, WASD to move, mouse to rotate camera, and it's already everything is set up. And because the first person controller has a camera attached to the player, we can delete the previous camera, the main camera. We don't need it. So we have the main camera here, and you can see that because this is a prefab and it didn't know that we integrated Wwise with Unity, it still has the old audio listener. So we'll remove this audio listener and we'll put the audio kinetic audio listener. If you want to add it, you can search it, search listener, you will find that script, or go directly to the scripts, which are Wwise deployment components audio listener. Here's that script. Don't put two audio listeners on a camera. That's bad. We have a character. We can move in the world if we press play. Yeah. So here we go. As you can see, we got an error because we tried to initialize the Wwise engine, and we actually haven't touched our Wwise project yet, and we haven't created any sound banks. So it actually tried to load the sound banks, didn't find any sound banks, and throwed an error. Don't worry about this, we'll fix this right away. The next step is we need to set up our Wwise project. We will import sounds into Wwise. I have a couple of sound assets here. One is door closing, and another one is a stone impact. Awesome. Those sounds is from a project I worked a while ago. They were created by our sound collaborators. Respect to you, Marquitos. So basically adding sounds into the Wwise engine is pretty simple, just drag and drop. But like I said, this tutorial won't be a Wwise tutorial. That sounded weird. Convert the sounds, we Shift C, and that converts the sound to format that Wwise is happy with. And right now we have two sounds here. We'll just create, we won't touch any of the parameters of the sound, we'll just create two events. Play this sound and play this sound. So we go to the events, we have play closed door, play stone impact. We'll create a new sound bank, and this is the important part. This is where it starts to get tricky. So we'll create a new sound bank, we'll call this Wwise sound bank. Awesome. We need to switch to the sound bank view, which is F7, or go to Windows, layouts, F7, sound bank. We have the sound bank. We need to specify which platform we're building, we're generating the sounds, language, English, and click on user settings, override project soundbank settings, and be sure to generate header files. Unity uses those header files, so yeah, generate those header files. Now we have our sound bank, we have two events. We'll drag and drop the events into the sound bank. As you can see, it took all the sounds and everything, and we can generate the sound banks. Sound banks were generated successfully, everything's good. And now we'll save the project, and if we'll go to Unity, we will look at the Wwise speaker. We can see that our events that we created in Wwise are here now, as well as our sound banks. And we can see everything that is happening in Wwise. Basically, the Wwise speaker is updating our Wwise project. Okay, the next thing that we'll do, we will try to trigger a sound. Oh, this error just drives me nuts. We'll try to trigger a sound inside Unity. So we'll create a new cube, just a cube in the world. As this cube will actually be our trigger. I will make it a little bit bigger. And it rhymed. That was awesome. Cool. This cube has a collider. In order to this collider to be a trigger, we have to take the trigger boolean. And now this is how easy it is. If you want to add a sound to the world, we have this cube. We'll call this cube sound trigger. For example, when the player enters this trigger, I want the door sound effects to be triggered, and when he exits, I want the stone impact. All we need to do is take the event and drag and drop it into the inspector of the sound trigger. I'll do it again. So I select the sound trigger and drag and drop the event. Now it added two scripts. One script is a audio kinetic ambient to trigger an event, and the second script is audio kinetic game object. The game object script helps Wwise recognize this game object and treat it as a game object. There are a bunch of parameters inside Wwise that can be defined by the game object, and this scripts let those parameters be defined. As well, we need to add rigid body. Rigid body basically means this object is being affected by physics, and because this is the trigger and trigger is like a collision, so it's part of physics inside the Unity engine. So we do need to add a rigid body, but make sure it doesn't use gravity and it is a kinematic, so whatever forces or physics changes is happening in the world won't apply to this box. This is pretty simple. Trigger on, which is basically starts. We have a bunch of conditions here. If I remain trigger on start, it will just trigger as we press play. Let's trigger this on start. Before we press play, we also need to load the sound banks, because right now there are no sound banks. The sound banks are not loaded in the scene, and Unity doesn't understand those events. Those events are part of the sound bank, and the sound bank is not loaded. So I'm gonna take the player, and the player will load the sound bank. How do I do this? I go to the Wwise speaker and just drag and drop the sound bank and sound bank load on start. That's it. Oh, sorry, on start. And here we can select which sound bank, this sound bank, and if we press play, we can hear the sound on start. We press play again. There it is. But I want this to be triggered on trigger enter. So on trigger enter. And then you can see when I select a trigger, there's another box appeared here, which is use other object. Use other object if, for example, the colliding object, which is now the player, so like the player enters this trigger. If the player has any events, it will trigger his events. But the player doesn't have any events. Either way, I want this event to be triggered, so I'm not using the other object. And here we can also change manually the name of the events that we want it to trigger. And here, this is an interesting part: action on event. We can trigger event. We'll just post, not post. We'll just use the default of whatever event we set up in Wwise. So for example, this is a play event, so it will play this event. We can set a pause event, stop event. It will just play the default event. But we can also override that event and play an action on this event. Regardless if it's a play event, a stop event, we can say stop, pause, resume, break. So we can basically override the play event, and we can stop the sound. So the first one is the event, the type, what we want to do with the event: stop, pause, resume, break. And then the second one is the interpolation curve, which is basically if we want to fade out, if we want to be a sine wave, a log, or a linear fade out. And here is the fade out: how many seconds will it take to fade out. We're not gonna use those things. What we are gonna do is on trigger exit, we're gonna drag this event, the stone impact, add this event here, and trigger it on trigger exit. So basically, there are 3 scripts on the sound trigger. I'll go through all the scripts again. We have the aka game object, which helps Wwise engine identify this as a game object. aka ambient on trigger enter will trigger the wood close. So when I enter this trigger, door will trigger. On trigger exit, it will trigger the stone impact. And that's it. Let's try it out. So I am looking around. This is the player. I enter and I exit, and I enter and I exit. Awesome. So we are now triggering sounds inside the Unity using Wwise engine. Another thing that I noticed while working with Wwise in Unity is that sometimes I want a specific trigger to trigger the events on the sound trigger. I'll give you an example. So for example, I have a cube. I'll create a cube, and this cube will be parented to my player, which let's 0 its location. And I don't know, this cube, for some reason my player has a giant cube in front of his face. And this cube is okay, it will be a little bit offset. So as for right now, I want this cube to be affected by physics, so I need to add a rigid body, remove gravity, and put kinematic. As for right now, everything that will collide, that will enter this trigger, anything will trigger the sound. It doesn't matter if it is the player, if it's this cube, if it's the ground itself. It doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. So I have the cube here, and because it is parented to the player, it rotates with the camera and moves around with the player. So the cube enters and the player enters the trigger. Both of them are triggering the trigger I want to make a specific trigger to this trigger. I want, for example, only the player or only the cube. So I modified AudioKinetic scripts a little bit to add that functionality. I have it. I have it here. I'll give the link to this package in the description of the video. We import those two scripts. Just click import, and this will add this little guy right here. Specific trigger. What specific trigger means? A specific object to trigger this event. So we tick on specific trigger, and here we can drag and drop the game object that we want to trigger it. For example, if we want the cube to trigger this, and here as well on trigger exit, we want the cube to trigger this. Let's play. And now any collision, anything that enters this trigger won't trigger the events. Only the cube will trigger the events. So the player enters and exits, nothing happens. But once the cube enters and exits, the events are being triggered. Thank you for watching, and I really hope this was useful for you guys. Enjoy.